Breakdowns.
Welcome back to the Chill Sounds and Breakdowns podcast. We are on episode, this is a mile marker. We're at episode 90 today. And today we are out and about again in Dallas. And I'm honestly super stoked because I'm a fan of this band here. But today we have Devin from Sunsleep. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
First of all, yeah, you're on this amazing tour, by the way. I feel like this lineup perfectly, just fits, makes sense. It's such great. But you've been on it for a little bit already. How's it been?
It's been great, man. Yeah. We've toured with Johnny before, so he's a good longtime friend of ours. And we've been on this tour, I think, about 4 weeks about now. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Everybody on the lineup, it was just this is a really strong vocally driven lineup, and for me
sure.
personally, I'm just that's exactly what I love. But so when I saw the lineup, I saw Johnny first of all touring the Emerosa album, which is
oh wow, okay.
amazing, yeah. And then I saw everybody on the lineup, A Foreign Affair, and then you on there, and I'm just was super excited, but especially excited because y'all just dropped a new album,
yes, sir,
Moonlight
yep.
Euphoria, which a month ago now.
Yeah, it came out October 27th. So
okay.
Yeah.
How long were you working on that?
Yeah, so we spent probably the better part of 2 years working on that album. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so demoed back, even as early as 2019 on some of these tracks. So
okay.
A while back on some of them. It was kind of a compilation of a bunch of stuff, and then we got together, we signed with SBG. I think in 2021 is when that was, and so we were going to plan on releasing an EP, then that turned into a full-length album.
Okay.
So the band flew out to Utah, and I worked with them, produced the record, and we wrote a bunch more tracks to make a full-length. So
yeah, because because the original Sunsleep music and stuff has been around since 2018, 17? Okay.
Yeah.
Which is where I first learned about Sunsleep. And honestly, I love these moments, especially being around what I do is when I find a band just organically, which was I heard 11 minutes. Right?
11 minutes.
11 minutes was the first time I heard it, and I'm this is a great song. And then I find out that y'all at the time were Dallas based, and I'm oh, what the fuck? This is right next to where I live. So in my brain, I'm it didn't comprehend because I was this is really fucking good. And then everything off that initial stuff was amazing and really well written. Is this the first project that you've been involved with, or have you been writing for a while? Because it feels you're a very experienced songwriter.
Yeah, definitely not the first project I've been in. I've been in bands since I was in high school, and been doing songwriting for a long time. So this is the most fleshed out project I've been in. I guess you could say. Yeah. But yeah, dude, it's been a wild ride, and band started in Dallas, and I'm actually from Salt Lake City.
Really? Okay.
So yeah, they found me on the internet. That's how that started. I featured on that song Fever that came out in 2017.
Oh, okay.
And we got picked up by management, started touring, and then the rest is history since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then coming into it and making it your own, it feels that's what this, because again, those are really good songs, but it feels the record feels where I guess you're kind of finally finding that cohesiveness to it, even though these songs are written you were saying some starting in 2019.
Yeah.
It feels there was a certain vibe that was the goal that you achieved with the writing of the record. Was what went into trying to figure out what that sound was, or was it already something in your brain already?
Yeah, I feel there's a lot of just classic Sunsleep sounds on this record. We kind of had everything figured out, pre-pandemic, with what we wanted to do, and then there was a lot of experimentation during the actual album process later on when we signed to SBG. I wanted to try some new things out. Your tastes change over time, and we're listening to different stuff than we were back then. But I definitely feel it's a record that feel it came together pretty seamlessly in the end of it. Obviously, there was revisions and demos of certain songs that took on a new life and stuff like that. So
is there a big thing some of those songs that were demoed and written, once you signed and maybe had the ability to work on it a little bit more, that caused some change to them?
That's kind of how demos work sometimes. It's you write something just in the moment, how you're feeling, and you're this could be cool on something, and then when you have a fully visualized album concept or something. It's not a conceptual album by any means, but you have a style or a sound you're going for with it. It can kind of transform and, fit in that mold a little bit better. Yeah.
What's your personal process like for writing? Like, what do you start with? I know you do vocals like on the album, but you obviously play guitar, and I feel like you do a lot more of the behind the scenes
I do.
stuff,
I produce music. Yeah. Okay. So I work out of Logic. I usually typically start out with just writing a guitar part or something, or a piano part, or coming up with a chord progression. And I'll just, quickly write a demo version of a song just to get the structure fleshed out. And then we'll go in and I'll kind of fine detail, tracking separate guitars, different types of amps, building the whole track from the ground up and whatnot. So
have you, I know there was a big boost during the pandemic for people to learn how to produce and stuff like that. Yeah. But was this something you were doing already pre that time?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I've been producing music since I was right out of high school. So
was it mostly, I know mostly that motivation is always just you have songs that you want to do, and it's just well, if I can learn how to do it, kind of just gives you that more. That's one thing I'm always super jealous in a great way of people who can do that, because you're able to fully flush out ideas in your head, especially with production. If you even I have friends who they don't play drums, but they know how to use their how to produce drums and how to actually create them there and be able to flush out an actual idea. And especially with bands, I think with writing, it's cooler when you bring a band or a project or something a little bit more of a complete idea. It's this is kind of what I'm seeing here, so that with the band it's easier to build off of that.
Definitely. Yeah, it's really great to have people to bounce ideas off of, and give you constructive criticism on things. And that's one of the big things about being in a band. It's cool having everybody in a room kind of going for the same goal, but has different perspectives on things. So I always love working with, bands and other artists and writing with different people.
Do you produce for other people as well?
I do, yeah. Okay. I do co-writes and that kind of stuff as well, yeah.
Oh, okay. So how do you work on that? Co-writing, do you mostly focus on learning, adding your perspective to something, or trying to encapsulate what the person that you're helping write is trying to write?
No, I definitely love to work off of what an artist is going for, what their vision is. I worked actually with Johnny on some new stuff that's coming out later.
Really? Okay.
Next year, 2024. And they kind of have a specific sound to what they're going for and whatever.
That's Johnny Craig for people.
Right. Exactly. So if I'm working with somebody, it's I'll get familiar with their identity as an artist and, put my little spin on it as a producer or a co-writer or whatever.
Well, that's really cool, because I know Johnny, along with you had, just skipping to this, but the album had some amazing features, which Johnny, Rory, was nuts. I know, I've been a super big Johnny Craig fan and Dayseeker fan for the longest time, and then Steven from Amberlin, that's absolutely nuts. And you were saying that you just played with them not so long ago.
About a year ago, we did their 20-year reunion of Never Take Friendship Personal. They played 3 of their albums back to back. Residency. Yeah, it was cool. We played their Denver shows.
Holy shit.
That was a good time for me, man. I grew up listening to that band. They were that band that I went and saw live and was I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the funny thing is I didn't listen to a lot of Amberlin, but Amberlin will bring me to touch something with you, is that Steven has such a unique voice that you hear that voice on anything and I know who it is. You know what I mean? And I feel when I first heard Sunsleep, that you have a very distinct voice that's very easy to pick out from
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's just very easy to pick out in what song. If I heard you on something else, another song, I'd be oh, that's you. And very I was lucky enough to catch part of the sound check, and your voice is so clean, man. I don't know how to describe it other than that. Where I was I turned around and talked to my girlfriend, and I was just it sounds like the record. This is nuts. It's I don't know. I was just getting goosebumps there. But was singing the first thing you did musically, or did you start with a guitar? Or?
Yeah, I think I gravitated towards singing. My dad sang in a band in the 80s, and I've always been around singing, as a kid with him. And playing guitar was honestly my second love as well. So those kind of went hand in hand when I was a teenager. And so I'd play in local bands, doing both, playing guitar, rhythm guitar, and singing. So
okay. So you grew up a little musical already, just already with it being like a confusing
towards it, yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't any good, of course, until later in life, but yeah.
Which is nuts to think about right now. So Amberlin, who were those other like big, like, I guess like
early influences?
Early influences, the ones that really like put you to like, oh, I want to do this.
Yeah, Amberlin, Circa Survive, Anthony Green, like, was a huge influence for me early on as well in high school. Seozen, you know, all those bands. I was definitely into that like early 2000s post-hardcore in my teenage years growing up and stuff. So yeah, definitely that kind of stuff. And you know, I've always been into just like really like contemporary alt pop stuff too, like Coldplay and the Killers and those kinds of bands as well. So I grew up listening to, you know, alternative music essentially. Yeah.
It's funny to see like what your early influences are, because they're not all similar, but we all start from like a really like generic like place of like, oh, we're all listening to this block. And then with music now, how accessible it is and how much music is coming out, like it's crazy how that influence just branches off into like very specific, like, oh, I like this off of one thing. With that and like in producing music, how is navigating that with just releasing an album, and like how do you navigate like being able to cut through and like get your like music highlighted and be able to see it? I saw a couple things where like y'all just got on like some of the Spotify playlists and stuff like that. But what are like other things that you look for in that?
I think with me, it's just like, it's about being like honest and like having integrity with what you're writing, you know, like you're going to have influences from all over the place. And I'll hear a song by, you know, a band that I'm listening to, and I'll be like, that's really cool. Like a production trick or something. I want to do something similar to that, but like put my own spin on it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's really like the most important thing when cutting a record or writing songs or anything, is like having a vision, and then also like understanding what your identity is and like what you bring to the table as an artist that's different maybe than everyone else, you know, and really focusing in and honing in on that, you know. The playlisting stuff, all that other stuff's really cool or whatever, and I'd be happy whether I release music and, you know, nobody listened to it or you know, it blew up or whatever as well. So it's just one of those things that's like, I enjoy the process of writing music and, you know, putting my identity into it for sure.
I think that's a big thing, and it's something I've come across like this, not this year, but I tend to like just lean heavy towards anything and everything that feels just genuine and authentic. And I feel like you can, in the era of like this online era with stuff that's like very fleeting, like it's really nice to see like, oh, like even if something isn't for you, if music isn't your taste, like you still, if you find somebody doing it and you know that that's like what they want to do and it's coming like from themselves, it's very appealing. Like that's why I feel like I get that a lot on like live shows is the best way to see that. Like if you see, like if I see a band like having a great time playing the music that they love, it's just like immediately, even if I don't like necessarily know, it's very infectious. It's very infectious. I think that's like super, super important, like for bands to captivate, because I feel like it's way easier to captivate somebody in a live setting than it is like online, especially how like very like fleeting stuff is online. But yeah, being genuine is like the biggest thing in music. With you and your writing like style and process, how was that like trajectory for you? Was it very long till you felt like you were writing stuff that was really you, or was it kind of a bit of a longer process where it was more like emulating at the beginning?
Yeah, I think all like young artists tend to emulate their heroes, right? So that's one of the things that I did early on, and everyone kind of does early on when you're trying to figure out, you know, how to songwrite and just put together something. It's like, oh, I want to write something like this or whatever. And I think that now, you know, I'm in my 30s now, so I've been doing it for a while, but you kind of catch on to these things, these quirks that feel authentic, and you kind of double down and focus in on those things. But I'm always hearing things now where I'm just like, man, that's really cool, you know. But how can I do that in the vein of Sunsleep, you know, or how can I do that, you know? Like I listen to a lot of like pop music these days, like Harry Styles and like Ariana Grande and like, you know, that kind of stuff influences me more, I would say, now than like the post-hardcore world, but I still have a love for that because I grew up on it, you know? So those types of influences tend to kind of like leak into the stuff that I'm doing vocally, you know, and it's very different. You get a different flavor for sure. So.
Which I think that's so smart, like to do. One of the things that I realized, like, is when I used to write music, is like when I was listening to like, because like in a metalcore project. So when I was listening to just like metalcore stuff to write metalcore, like I would write very similar stuff over and over. and because I was like, well, I can't use influences from like this artist over here, like a pop song, or even like for me with like a lot of like the screaming cadences, I took a lot of like influence from like hip hop cadences. I'm like, oh, that's a really cool cadence. I'm like, why can't that be used in this? But there's a lot of like, sometimes it gets highlighted, but a lot of like controversy when you add elements from something that's not supposed to be like allegedly not supposed to be in it. But I feel like it makes the coolest like songs.
There's no rules, man. I mean, like I was listening to a fuck ton of The Weeknd, you know, when we were writing this record, and you can hear all sorts of Weeknd-esque melodies in there. Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things that like it translates and it's interesting and, you know, different. So
yeah, at the end of the day, like you want to make interesting stuff and interesting for yourself. You know what I mean? Like it's 100%. Gotta keep you. That's the only way you're gonna keep writing and doing the music that you love is if you like add every influence that you're taking in and 100%. Being able to actually like that's the only way to encapsulate what your genuine like take on your music is to not limited from all that stuff. And I think you definitely do a great job with that. Like again, like I am very like vocally focused when it comes to like albums, and like this album just really just like hit the mark on a lot of stuff because like Hello Goodbye was the first single release, and it had been a while, you know what I mean? So I was always wondering, I was like, oh, what's happening like with Sunsleep? Because again, every time like one of those songs, like the older songs would come on, and I'm just like, how the fuck is this? Like, where is it? I'm like, I need to know. And hearing that was so fucking exciting. Even I think the way y'all tease it first, of just like the single is gonna be released, and I was just like, it just popped up on the timeline. I'm like, what is happening? Like right now, I was like so stoked, and the song just like was very strong and like powerful. But then like the record also like mellows down with some of the other stuff, but. What it keeps in common, I think, is just very, very catchy like stuff in the record that keeps me like humming and singing. And you just like during the sound check, we're playing like played 2 songs, and I was realizing while I was setting up, I'm like, oh, I'm humming still like the chorus like of the song like still right now it's in my head. In that, I feel like there's a lot of influence from like pop, and then that's when I realized that I really do enjoy a lot of pop music because of that repeat like and listenability to it, to be able to like, oh, okay, I want to listen to this again right after it ends.
It's an infectious melody, dude. It's a powerful thing, man.
Yeah, and it's very because I used to again I bring this up quite a bit. I used to be very when I was way younger, very elitist towards pop music. It's like it's so easy, like it's boring, it's this and that, and I realized like, oh, to write something that catchy like takes a lot of skill, you know what I mean? Like, and it's very, very difficult.
It's honestly one of like the most challenging markets because like there's so many amazing producers and writers in the pop world. Yeah. So you get these like 15 brains on one song, and sometimes they turn out to be incredible and win every award, and like there's a reason for that,
Well, that's what, and I also used to wonder that. So that's because you would go to look at like song credits, and there's like a shit ton of writers on like a
lot of talented
song.
People.
But it's like, oh, they know like exactly what they're doing, almost like down to a science of like, oh, this is gonna hit. And I've after that, like I've seen a few like just like documentary clips and stuff like that where it's like, oh yeah, this melody was written because it's I don't know. I wish I knew more like music theory, but it's like, oh, these hit in this order, like this note. I mean, that's why the whole like thing where they say like the 4 chords thing of like all the pop songs and stuff. But there's a way to put those in order. Sure, when I look at that, I'm like, everyone has access to those 4 chords. It's not like people don't know them. Like, but how are you gonna use that? You know what I mean? And,
how are you gonna filter that through your perspective?
Exactly.
You can take those 4 chords and write 100,000 million different songs with them, so.
But yeah, how is yours gonna like hit at the moment?
Exactly.
Okay, so the album just dropped. Signing to SBG, like how has that experience been for you, like just personally, like getting signed to something like that? Yeah,
it was awesome, man. We had talked with Colin, who was signed with them with Rain City Drive before. They moved over to a different label. And then Shan, he's the owner of SBG. He's an awesome guy. Mm-hmm. So we had some conversations with him, like I said, probably around 2021 after we had demoed some more songs together. And he got right behind us, man, and really supported us in putting a full length out. That's something that I'd always wanted to do. Yeah. And the rest of the guys as well. So that was an exciting thing, just to sign to a new label and put out a full length and, do the damn thing, I guess. Yeah. to put lightly, I don't know. But
no, I mean that is what it is. Like, but the weird thing, and I think in my room, but I think like with you and the trajectory of like your career is that you've met the connections to know how to like do something like this.
Yeah.
Me, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I don't even know how do you get point A to point B? Like who do you talk to?
It's all these little connections. Like we toured with Johnny right before he left Slaves. And then I met Colin and all those guys that formed Rain City and all that. And so they were interested in trying to help kind of get Sunsleep on, a label or whatever.
Really?
And, yeah. And then they hooked us up with Shan. And so it's just like you meet these people on these tours. Sometimes, other people talk to other people and networking, it's an amazing thing.
That's the guaranteed is that people will talk to other people especially like if they like what you're doing and like they like enjoy it and they feel like they can get behind it, then they would definitely like talk to like whoever they can. And it goes like on the small scales, like, oh, when's the last time that I like heard a band that I really like and immediately try to tell everybody like of my friends. But it goes on to more levels if you meet like more people that are like, oh, this person's like working hard, their music's great, like that's just something I will like help them push like to something. But networking, that was something that was in my brain before like we started Noise Around. So networking was like, oh, you have to like those like I've only heard the term networking event. I'm like, oh, you have to go to those, right? It's like a cocktail party thing, and that's how you network, I guess. Like I don't know how to do that. And then just realizing like, oh no, it's literally just talking to people, like it's
getting to know people.
Yeah, finding someone to show, especially like anywhere you are with me. I'm like, oh, like I'm meeting musicians all the time. I'm meeting people who are doing photography, people who are like producing stuff like that. Like all those people are around. Like you're not gonna, and you won't find out unless you talk to people. That's why I love the live show culture, because like if most of the time you're able to meet a few people there and somebody's doing something. You know what I mean? Like,
it's very organic,
Very, yeah.
And that's how it's always been for Sunsleep. Like we've never been this band that's like blown up on any social media platform or had any of that happen for us. It's all been very like grassroots. Like we go on a tour, we meet people, those people talk to other people, we make new friends, those kinds of things. So it's all been a very like organic process.
How do you feel about like that? Like the viral like hits like overnight kind of thing?
I think that's awesome, man. I mean, those people are working super hard, and I mean, virality is not something that really just happens. Those people are doing stuff for years typically until something pops off. So I think that's
one of the misconceptions in it is that like, oh well, they just made one song. It's like, no, like those people have probably been writing a shit ton of songs, and that's just the one you heard.
And then they were in a project before that, and another project.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they like, oh, I just got all my recording stuff, made a song, and then like there it is.
There it
like
is.
No, like
number one hit.
Yeah,
immediately.
Yeah. And it's just saying like like for me, I'm like, oh, the first project I hear like with you is Sunsleep, and I'm like, oh, this is really good, but you've already been in tons of projects and learning how to produce and doing all this stuff to where even your first songs with a new band are still going to be a lot more developed than someone starting from scratch. So it's not like, again, it's coming out of nowhere. Like it's coming out of the skill set that has been built, So I love when that happens and you find out like, oh, these people have been like working, and most of the time that is the case. I just think the virality is a lot of pressure. Like sometimes depending on where you are, you know what I mean? Like if you're not prepared for it, I think the internet's very cruel.
Yeah, and I don't really honestly care about any of that stuff. It's just like I just do what I love, and if people like it, and then cool. you know, I'm not out here trying to like, I'm no social media expert. I don't know what the next hot new TikTok trend's gonna be or anything like that. I love creating music and love putting it out there. So. That's
like how so you've been on tour for about a month now on this one. How many have y'all done a few different tours? What's been the reception on like this one?
This one's been great, man. I mean, it's a 15-year anniversary for Amorosa's. I think The Past Should Stay Dead. I'm not sure exactly the album title.
Oh, Relativity.
Relativity, that's correct. So, 15 years of that. So, I mean, a lot of these kids have been coming out to see Johnny do that and see Sunsleep because we just put out a new album. And it's been like, I think it was like 4 years or something it took. So, it's been a while since, they've heard new Sunsleep until that. So, we gave them a full length, Are
you getting a lot of like people who have like heard the record and stuff like come like?
Definitely, yeah. A lot of people have been showing up that have been listening to the new album.
That's so cool.
Been waiting for an album from Sunsleep for a while. Yeah. So,
especially like with those, like you were saying, like touring is one of those ways that you can make that organic, genuine connection with people because it's in person and they just saw it like happen live. So it's like, oh, this is the best time. Because I've had that happen with, I can't remember which band most recently, but the one I always remember is like for the first time I'd never heard of a band It was Outline and Color, like a long time ago. Long time. But I remember seeing them, and they were really good. And I met like a few of them, and they talked to me. And I remember like the next time they came through, like I brought maybe like 2 or 3 of my friends. And I'm like, oh, that's. Now when I look it back, and I was like, oh, that's what you need. Like, oh yeah, one person being like, oh, okay, let me bring a few other people. But if you get 3 or 5 people to do that, and then they bring at least one other person, you're doubling like that. But I think the organic way to do it in live shows is like the easiest way to get people to come actually see you. Yeah.
Still 100% necessary. Yeah,
Very.
It really is.
And I feel like it's one of the funnest parts. Like you get to play those songs.
I genuinely enjoy it, man. It's like I love being out here playing live in front of people and meeting new people. A lot of the people that have come up to the merch table are like, "This is the first time I've heard your band. I'm gonna go add all your stuff on Spotify." So that to me is amazing. It's like we've made like 300 new fans or something.
So sick. Yeah. That's got to be like the most like empowering part and like just magical part of like music, of how quickly it creates like those organic bonds with strangers. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just like people like, oh, I've never met these people, but through music, like, oh, we're in the same room and feeling some of like same emotions. But what I like about songs and art is that you wrote them in one specific way, and then your audience gets to take them on and, you know, add whatever their influence was through life, and that's what it means to them. Have you had some of like those people come up where it's like they'll come and tell you like, this song means sort of this to me, or that kind of interactions? How has that been? Yeah,
there was a lady that came up to me in Oklahoma, and she's like, I played Dive at my wedding, and that was like my wedding track. What? Yeah, and I was like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. But in a good way, it's crazy. Like I'm just like, wow, man, I'm honored to honestly like be a artist that you chose to get married to. Like
that's insane. That's that's so cool though.
Yeah, so we've had some people come up and, you know, say like, you know, just this song really meant a lot to me during a hard time, those kinds of things. And it's always really cool to hear that, you know, that they took that, something that I wrote, and used it to help them get through something. So
do you use your writing in kind of the same fashion?
Sometimes, yeah. I used to use songwriting as very like a therapeutic thing to help me kind of like cope with certain things, bring certain things to light, you know, express myself in a way. And there's a lot of that on this record too, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also use songwriting as just a way to kind of like express ideas, or, you know, talk about certain topics or themes, and just kind of build a song off of that. So
okay,
yeah,
that's I love that there's so many different ways to like write a song. And then me, until I started sitting in on like my friends' projects and just like studio sessions and stuff, I'd be sitting there listening to a melody. I'm like, oh, this is how it's gonna get written, because it's the way in my head. And then see them take it a completely different way. I'm like, whoa, that's awesome. And then I think that helped a lot. And I think that's why like collaborative efforts are like important. And like you do a lot with you write with like other people.
Yeah.
It's taking in all those new perspectives to widen out like, oh, whatever I thought was the only way to write a song, there's infinite more depending on who it is, you know, or what emotion you're trying to capture. Or again, like when you write a song and to you it means a certain thing, and then you hear someone come up to you and it means something completely different, they're both still like valid interpretations of that song.
100%.
Which is what's awesome about like music and art in general. Like everybody can take it and interpret it like their own way, and it's so special like to see that. But yeah, music and community is so cool. Like it's such a great like aspect, and you've been a part of it for a while now. But so you're still out in Utah, you said?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then meeting the guys online. Nuts. And was it like all like online initially, or just like,
it
or
was.
Did you, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of an internet thing for a little bit, until we got picked up by management, and that single that we put out, just a lot of people were clicking on it and paying attention, and it was like, let's get you guys on tour. So we picked up a tour and went on from there, you know, became like a real band.
Has anything like, have you had any like crazy like mishaps on tour or tour life or something like that?
Oh yeah, we've had some interesting mishaps for sure. We had our van broken into in San Francisco.
Oh no.
Yeah, they just rolled up, busted a window out, and stole our merch guy's bag with his clothes in it. So they didn't even get anything good out of the situation.
Oh my god, just his fucking clothes.
I know, his clothes and his Nintendo DS, man. Shout out to Hunter. I feel bad still, but
damn.
Yeah, that was probably the craziest thing that's happened to us on tour. Luckily, we haven't had anything like chaotic, like a van flip or anything, you know, knock on wood, like that kind of situation. So Yeah.
That's crazy. I haven't really like before taken a look at like what a van getting broken into like means for a band on the road.
Yeah.
Before I was like in a scene or something, like on the outside, in my head, every band that was touring before I knew anything was like, oh, well, they got money, like, or whatever. And then when you realize like, oh, like a lot of those bands like need to get to those shows.
No,
so,
it's
like,
very much the opposite.
Yeah,
man.
like, it's like you're probably spending a lot of money, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's career ending. Like how big of a deal for someone who's just gonna like flip it for whatever the cheapest thing is because they don't know what the fuck they have anyways. Because a lot of the
terrible,
stuff,
man. It's honestly the worst thing. I hear all these horror stories of bands getting all their gear stolen and stuff like that, and you know, you have to put up a GoFundMe because it's like we do not have the resources to replace this.
Because all that again, it's not stuff you bought for the tour. It's not stuff that got bought that year. Normally it's stuff that you've accumulated for such a long time.
Exactly.
And
man.
and sometimes like I've seen stuff where like, oh, this isn't even like available anymore. You can't like find this, or, you know, to replace everything like that is absolutely insane. Like it's crazy. It's definitely a band ender.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like something where it's a lot more catastrophic, I think, than the people doing it like think of. Like no one's thinking of like, oh, that's whatever, they're just breaking into something. But yeah, I have personally seen like just bands go away after that because it's like, oh, well, we can't really do anything, you know. Maybe they finish off the tour with like borrowing stuff from it, but then there's like, oh, sometimes you have specific stuff that needs to run a specific way. But yeah, every bit of equipment is nuts to get like,
it's absolutely
like
necessary, dude. And like it's one of those things where it's like if that was to happen to me, like that would like be a guitar that I've had for years and years and years that like means something to me, or like a computer that I have like my hard drive on literally is on this tour. It's like that's all my projects, like everything gone. So horror story situation, but you know, those kinds of things do happen on the road, and it's just unfortunate for sure.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate. That's not gonna happen here. We got a bunch of wood around here. We're not gonna, I hope this is wood. I don't know.
My air tags and everything, man.
Yeah,
so don't try to steal my stuff. I'll find you.
We will find you. All right. Yeah, absolutely nuts it when it happens, but luckily hasn't happened, and it won't happen.
Yeah,
I'm calling it right now.
Happen,
it won't happen. Yeah. So the live again, live it sounds so absolutely sick. Is there anything specific you do to prepare like for tour or shows just in general?
Yeah, man. I mean, I like to, you know, take care of myself, make sure I'm getting a lot of sleep, because sleeping is huge for vocalists. That's a big one for me. Obviously, before the tour starts, there's a lot of just like nerdy preparation with like backing tracks and guitar tones and all of that. You know, this tour I spent a good 2-3 months of just straight up preparing, because
holy shit.
Yeah, I'm also touring with fill-in guys on this tour from Salt Lake, so you know I had to teach people parts and get rehearsals together. So it was definitely probably it was a process. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, honestly, but it was definitely worth it in the end. So this tour's been amazing for us.
Yeah, damn, yeah, because you're having to teach everybody like the parts and stuff like that, and then setting up all your like this is all like the small stuff that I never like think. I'm like, oh, like the guitar sounds that way because somebody spent time to make it sound like that way. And then backing tracks, like all that stuff. I remember like when my band first started using them, we prep them every like live show, and then they would work like 1 out of 4. Like something would mess up, but it's because I feel like thinking at it back, I'm like, we would get them to work just enough to where they work, but not like we weren't ready for like, oh, what happens if this craps like, or you know, this craps out, or this isn't working, how do I troubleshoot this without stressing out about it? So like me, I was just like, I was vocalist, I'm just like, if they don't work in like 5 minutes, like we're just figuring this shit
rolling
out.
Through it.
I mean, it sucks, but I think that's why, like, when people say, like, oh, you know, work on your craft or something like that, there is a very big, like, thing to that of, like, yeah, if you want to do this, like, you need to spend so much time on it so that you're ready to go, like, for these things. And be prepared for, like, those, like, mishaps. Because, yeah, we've had, I've seen and have been part of, like, the bands are up there for, like, 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do this. And in those moments, realizing like, oh, I should have done this, and like you can't really live.
You live and learn, man.
You have to, you have to be able to adapt and do that stuff. but yeah, I think just the showing of preparation of like what you did for this tour and to win under the circumstances and still being able to pull off like great shows and great amazing turnout, I think just shows that work ethic that you have, and I think it comes through in the music. It's super, like, again, the album is beautiful, like it's great. And again, I've been a fan of the band for a while now, and just being able to see the full length actually come out was a super like happy moment, like for me when I saw the singles coming out, and even like seeing the features on it. I'm like, dude, like, yes, I go, they deserve like this. Like, this is what I feel like Sunsleep should be at, and I'm so excited for like what you have coming up next, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm ready. Like, we're sticking around, we're seeing the show tonight, so I'm super excited to hear more of it live. And yeah, thank you so much for talking to me, dude. This is fun.
This has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, so follow. It's just at Sunsleep, like on everything, right?
At Sunsleep, Sunsleep Band, I think, on Twitter. I think it's the same for TikTok too. We're not very active on there, unfortunately. But yeah, Sunsleep, just on everything. So,
Heck yeah, Sunsleep. All right, well, this has been episode 90 with Devin from Sunsleep. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time.
See ya. Peace out.